Hello, everyone. Tuning in for GovTech Week events to talk about sustainability and minimum viable planet. What does that mean? I am Žygimantas Zabieta, innovation expert and sustainability consultant, founder of Impact Meetups, a platform to talk about sustainability. Therefore, it's a pleasure for me to be a moderator of this fireside chat with an amazing person, Ms. Sandra Saraf from Bolt, who is a sustainability manager for this amazing unicorn, changing the way we transport, the way we get our food, and the way we get from A to B. So, hello, Sandra. How are you?
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great, and even greater now that I'm having this chat with you.
Amazing. You are in Tallinn, right?
Exactly. And actually, I'm in the office today, which is pretty rare these days. But sometimes you need to just get out of your house and, see some other people.
Yeah, this COVID crisis is really affecting us, but I would love to have an in-person conversation with you, but we are here. Everything happens online. All the conferences, all the events had to go to Zoom or other
Some people
platforms.
even get married online,
Exactly, and that's amazing. So, that's some companies are really happy. They look at their budgets and they see green numbers for travel because they can cut these flights, and now they're emitting so much less of CO2.
Yeah, Bill Gates wrote in his blog that the CO2 emissions globally are down by 8%. So, I mean, this is for a very short period of time, but you can see how much impact it makes how we travel, actually.
Do you think that the way the habits that are changing due to COVID will remain in the future in the post-COVID world?
I wish, but I don't think so.
So you think that please?
Yeah, I think even Estonia is a good example, right? We got very much used to the fact we had to stay at home, shop as little as possible, and so forth. And now it's like nothing happened in March. We're back to exactly the same pace. And for the past couple of days, actually, the cases are going up again. Mm-hmm. I think people forget super easily. And for instance, we did a study at the office because in Tallinn we have 3 offices. So we asked people after the COVID period, would you still like to come back to the office or work from home? And it was a very high percentage of people who said that they would prefer to work from home, like 70% of the time at least. And after a couple of months, people actually started to change their mind, thinking, okay, actually, I would like to come back to the office if possible.
Yeah. Actually, talking about conferences and events and working from home, this week I had a pleasure and an honor to participate in a conference organized by World Economic Forum for Global Shapers Community worldwide, where the final keynote was delivered by Mr. Vice President Al Gore. And since we are talking about sustainability, I would like to share some thoughts, from that conversation, from his speech. And he was, talking about that he started to talk about this more than 20 years ago. Talking about the climate and what was inevitable. Nobody listened. Nobody actually, cared about that, and especially the politicians and the big corporations. They're doing their job. And 20 years later, we can turn back and look what happened during those 20 years. And the climate change has come. And there's so many things happening all around the world, and nobody was listening until recently, where we had this amazing Greta Thunberg, and thanks to young people, most importantly young people, who drag the attention to the cause, and they said that sustainability is important and we're desperate of action. And to tackle climate change and the challenges, we need to replace bad practices with the good practices,
and make more conscious choices.
Yeah, and to do that, we need disruptive approach. And for governments and for all businesses, it's difficult to be disruptive. And here we have Bolt, which is a startup, which is a tech startup, which is a startup full of young people, I suppose. So
well,
what
I'm 31, and when I joined the company 1 year ago, I brought up the average age a lot.
Amazing. So please tell me, what is your company's response to the challenges, and how you see yourself in this global perspective? What is happening in the planet?
Yeah, so I joined Bolt 1+ years ago, but Bolt as a company was already founded in 2013. We expanded to Lithuania in 2015, I checked. And the purpose why the company was actually established in the first place was to reduce personal dependency on individual cars, right? So globally, or at the European level, people have on average 700 cars per 1,000 people. The worst thing about cars is you use them only 5% of the time. 95% of the time, your car sits somewhere on a parking slot. Cities like Vilnius and Tallinn have at least 3 parking spots per 1 car. And this is roughly 40 to 60 square meters of space. Space we could use for parks, for new schools, for new apartments even. 40 to 60 square meters, that's quite a lot. So actually, the fact that we use personal cars not only creates CO2 emissions, it actually takes away our city space as well. So Bolt's function is, or how we operate is, we hire drivers who have to be professional drivers according to the national requirements, but they use their own cars. So globally, we have 1 million drivers on our platform. We're in 35 countries around the world, and we have more than 1 million drivers, and they use their own cars. So actually, we make use of the car that would otherwise sit somewhere in a parking lot, and we try to make it as efficient as possible, right? Fast forward to last year, 2019, when people started, more and more talk about the green stuff, despite Al Gore's presentation on, climate change that he presented 20 years ago. And we started to realize that we need to take action as well. We say that we try to make the best use of personal cars, but the fact is, out of those 1 million cars globally, probably like 90% at least are internal combustion engine cars. So the biggest CO2 emitters, the biggest greenhouse gas emitters. Even though we try to introduce electric vehicles on the platform, they're still too expensive. The prices have gone down over the past 8 years, but still the biggest price drop will probably happen in the next 3-4 years. So far, they're not affordable to regular citizens, and also meaning our drivers, right? So our drivers will not sell their personal car and change it for an electric vehicle if it's today much more expensive, if there's no charging infrastructure or state subsidies and so forth. So last year we committed to a green plan, Bolt Green Plan, and we started offsetting all of our European rides. So basically we did in-house calculations on how much CO2 our cars emit, the cars that are on our platform, taking into account the motor type of the car, the age of the car, so forth. Going to the passenger to pick the passenger up and then take the passenger to the end destination. And based on this, we started offsetting our rides. But that was only the first step in 2019. And now we're looking at different aspects, how to expand with micromobility, meaning e-scooters, because they're much more environmentally friendly. How to get more electric vehicles or low emission or zero emission vehicles on the platform. And even we think about our offices. We try to create hotspots in offices so people would actually come in when they need to. We're limiting free parking because an OECD study showed that people are 15% more likely to come to the office if they have free parking than if they didn't, right? And we're looking to also use green electricity where possible. But out of the 35 countries where we operate, so far only around 7 countries offer green electricity options. So there's a lot to do.
Yeah, it's a lot to do, not only for corporations, but for different governments to adapt to the needs. And this is very interesting when, a company, a tech startup, is pushing for a green electricity, and not all the countries has these things to offer. But coming back to the your fleets and the vehicles, I have to share my personal observations. That every time I order Bolt, there is in Vilnius, there is the high probability that Toyota Prius will come, a hybrid car that will take you. And you know, it's very common to talk with the driver and ask these questions. I myself been working in the electric vehicle industry for a couple of years already, and so what they say is that, of course, it's you know, everything comes to money, and they're driving Prius not because it's you know, super fine feeling to drive the car, but for them it's so much cheaper.
Exactly. The Priuses are the most popular cars in our platform in Vilnius or in Lithuania. But it's not only the drivers who are price sensitive, it's also the users. When we launched our green plan, we did a study around 6 European countries. And basically we asked the people, would you use more greener options for transport if they were available? 90+% people said that they would. And then we asked, would you still use it if it's more expensive? Mm-hmm. And then again, 90+% people said they wouldn't. So we have to raise, you know, consumer awareness and teach them how to make more conscious or more greener choices.
Exactly. You know, it's very common to hear from climate skeptics that sustainability does not pay off. So why then Bolt is investing in sustainability? Why do you have this strategy? Is this argument valid?
I've read some studies. It's valid from the point of view that it's not economically sustainable. So all these kind of aspects for us as a company, in the short term, they cost us more money. You know, electric vehicles are much more expensive than, you know, internal combustion engine cars. A regular, you know, Fiat I can buy. Also, when we started offsetting, it means extra cost, right? So we invested some money into offsetting projects. For instance, we're creating alternative energy projects in African countries and so forth. So for us, it means extra expenditure. And as long as exactly the consumer is not willing to pay more, it means there is no return on investment so far. And for any company, especially a startup, return on investment or ROI is the most important thing. So that's why it's very hard to make this choice. You know, do we go greener and actually spend more money? Or do we take the easy way out and do it as it is? But I hope that in a matter of maximum couple of years, people are going to make more conscious choices and they realize that if there's an electric vehicle on the platform available for me, I might pay 1 or 2 euros more for my trip, but you know, this is the more responsible choice.
I would like to challenge this argument. If we would look at the statistics now, and like, okay, we can look at the statistics as it is now. We can look at the historical numbers from 2012, where all the most common electric vehicle was Nissan Leaf, and we can look at the future, which is inevitable and will happen in 3 to 5 years probably. Is the electric mile more expensive? Okay, then do you have any comparisons for the cost of per mile in the Toyota Prius versus other non-electric internal combustion engine cars?
Exactly. The electric mile itself will pay off pretty soon after you purchase the car. Rather, for us, the problem is we don't employ the drivers. The drivers are self-employed or they work for another business, right? And they use their own cars. So we don't provide the cars for them. So for an average person who earns a bit more than minimum wage or earns average wage for driving for any platform, for them to make this initial investment of buying an electric car, this is much more expensive for them to begin with. And that's the problem right now. So unless there are government subsidies available, not many of those drivers have this money to take out of their pocket and purchase an electric car, right? And furthermore, for the taxi service providers such as us, you need to travel even a couple of 100 kilometers within the city. So
Yeah.
if you go and use gas, you pump your gas into your car, it takes you 2 minutes or 5 minutes, and you can have a hot dog. If you have to charge the car, and there are no fast or ultra fast charging stations available, you're going to lose half an hour at minimum for charging the car, which means, you know, also half an hour worth of your salary, right?
Yeah.
So that's the question.
But I would like to wish for how to say, for the company to see more and more drivers making their own personal decisions to shift to electric or hybrid vehicles to from the economical perspective.
Mm-hmm.
When I was studying environmental management studies, the first thing that I heard in the university was saying that if you're not building a business plan out of sustainability, stop talking because people stop listening. So let's wish that the market will push the electric transportation more and more into your fleet.
Absolutely.
But then we can go to the scooters. That's a new thing. The scooters, some people like them, some people hate them, and they're everyone has an opinion about a scooter in central Vilnius, we can hear stories from other cities all around the world where this mean of transport is getting more traction and is becoming more and more popular. So what is your strategy about the scooters? Why did you decide? Is it really how does it play? How does it look in your sustainability plan and
Okay, yeah. So before I go back to your comment on some people hate the scooters, only two types of people hate the scooters: the ones who haven't tried them yet, and then the ones who tried them and liked them so much, and then they started complaining that we walk too little and we use too much scooters. Everyone else loves the scooters.
I will believe. Okay.
But yes, Bolt started with the electric scooters in 2018 in Paris. We're not there anymore with electric scooters, but now we're there with electric bikes because the electric scooter market was already, full basically. But we introduced last year across the Baltics, including in Vilnius, in Riga, in Tallinn, and this year we expanded to other cities as well. And actually, why we introduced these scooters is that as a platform, transportation platform, we're at a very unique position because we have a very wide user base who uses our cars already. So now we were the very first platform to introduce e-scooters to the same platform where you already had cars. So already ride hailing, right? And it means we can incentivize people to switch from ride hailing to e-scooters for shorter trips. Like when the trip is shorter than 3 kilometers, we're just launching a recommendation feature, which would say to the user, there's a traffic jam ahead, or it's just 1 kilometer or 2 kilometer. Take an e-scooter instead, because this is much more economically, economically as well feasible, but also environmentally friendly, right? Yeah. And if you have in a city 2,000 scooters per 100,000 citizens already, it means people are more likely to switch to e-scooters, and at least 100,000, 200,000 ride-hailing trips are not done within a year, and people switch to e-scooters instead, which is a massive number.
Yeah.
And actually, we started now manufacturing and designing our own e-scooters because last year we used the regular market model, which is actually developed by a company. Everyone uses those models. And these were first intended to individual users. Like I would go to an electronic store, I would buy an e-scooter and use it, and maybe use it for 5-10 kilometers per day. If you have the scooters for rentals, it means they are used as much as they can, right? Yeah. With the old model, you could use it for 20 kilometers and the battery ran out. Then you expand the battery version or use swappable batteries. You can extend the battery life. But still, those scooters weren't meant for continuous use by people just picking them up on the street. And that's why there was a study made in the US, which said that, the average life cycle of a scooter is 28 days. which
Yeah,
would
I
be
saw that
crazy.
study. That was crazy.
Yeah, because the biggest part of the scooter CO2 emissions is how the manufacturing part, so how it's made. So easy mathematics says if you expand the lifespan or life cycle of the scooter, then you can reduce the CO2 emissions, because when you use, especially when you use green electricity for charging it, there are no emissions from the ride itself, only the manufacturing process. So we started manufacturing and designing our own e-scooters. We have figured that the lifespan is between 36 months to 60 months, so even up to 5 years, which would significantly reduce the CO2 emissions. Yeah. But also we have made the scooters 90% of aluminium, so the same lightweight aluminium that's used in space industry, so that's super recyclable. And also the steel and plastic bits are recyclable. So our scooters are more than 90% recyclable. And when we use mechanics in all of the cities where we operate, we teach users how to treat the scooters better, just don't throw it somewhere. This all means we can expand the life cycle of the e-scooter. And it means this is basically virtually CO2 less form of ride for the people. And within the sustainability plan, basically, we have, when it comes to green, we are having two options. So we try to change the business verticals. Instead of internal combustion engine cars, we use electric vehicles or try to use them more. And then also we try to switch from ride hailing altogether to micromobility. And what we can't do inherently, then we offset. So, but e-scooters are an excellent example of how to get around in a city with basically no CO2 emissions.
I want to challenge this.
Please do.
From this greenwashing perspective, sustainable consumption or a consumption of an ecological product is not better than avoiding of consumption at all. Meaning that does it always replace a drive of the car? I mean, the scooter. Isn't it? Like it is fun to drive, it's quick to drive. My question is if some lazy people do not replace walking to scooters, or people that that have bikes, they replacing those with bikes that has zero electricity for their use, right? They replace it with scooters. So how is that? How many?
Yeah, it's a really good comment actually, and as I mentioned, there are only two types of people who hate the scooters, and one of those who have tried it and liked it so much that they switch from walking to scooters. So that's always a possibility. But again, as with I said, in the offices, people thought that they would only like to work from home, and now they realize, okay, we would actually like to come back to the office. It's the same with e-scooters. Even if at first you switch from walking to e-scooting, then at some point you realize, okay, I miss my walking as well. But for us, as I mentioned in the beginning, we have this unique user base, and we try to focus on switching people from ride hailing to e-scooters. So not from walking to e-scooters, but rather from ride hailing to e-scooters. So this would have this impact already. But of course, you're right. Some people love it so much that switch their biking and walking to e-scooters. But I personally do all of them. I bike, I walk, I take an e-scooter. And the better bits of the e-scooter is you can take it from somewhere, you can leave it for somewhere. You don't have to think about, locking it. Where do I take my bike with me? Maybe it starts raining. Now I would like to take the bus home instead, or a Bolt home instead. Where do I put my bike? So that's the convenience and really the significance of e-scooter, that it gives you so much flexibility.
It also depends the way people commute, the way people transport from A to B. It also depends on the government and the role that the public services are provided. So from your perspective, how differently countries and municipalities are dealing with transportation in different countries? You're operating in 35, so probably we have a quite a base to compare.
Yeah, so our e-scooters are in 42 cities. And here I would like to, honestly, from the bottom of my heart, take the opportunity to say Vilnius is doing a really good job. When COVID, the pandemic or the crisis started, then Vilnius city approached us and said, maybe you can bring out scooters earlier to streets this year, so we can offer alternatives to public transport. This was a unique. We're in 42 cities with the e-scooters, and no other city did that. So, hands together here for Vilnius, really. But I mentioned we're mostly in Europe and Africa. In Europe, we're not only in countries where there are regulatory burdens. So if there's some sort of old regulation that does not prohibit, new transport modes such as platform taxis, that's a reason where we're not there. Or the UK only now deregulated the e-scooter market because their legislation was 200 or so years old. Yeah. And if you write a piece of legislation long enough, it stands the test of time and you can actually block future innovation rate. Yeah. So it very much depends on the attitudes of the cities. But us as Bolt, we try to be as compliant with any regulation or new law as possible. So we always negotiate with the city. We don't, just jump into some market and say our service is now here when we haven't negotiated with the city or the government. But the approach is very different. For instance, coming back to the sustainability point, when it comes to e-scooters, one of the biggest bits of the CO2 emissions is how you deploy the scooters, how to take them from the warehouse, put them on the street. Do you use a diesel car, a diesel van, or do you use an electric van, right? Or maybe you use swappable batteries, meaning you can go to the scooter and change the battery there and take it back to the warehouse to be charged again. And some cities push requirements such as you cannot keep the scooters on the streets overnight, which means you're doing extra trips to transport the scooters back from warehouses. And if you use diesel vans for that, this is even more environmental responsibility. So many in those 35 countries, we have so many different rules and regulations for ride-hailing business, for e-scooters as well. But we try to negotiate with the cities and find the middle way that's suitable for both of us.
Thank you very much. Going back to the essence of the discussion, we are talking about MVP, about minimum viable planet, and it's true that there's only one planet and we are over consuming, and there are no planet B, or there is no plan B, right? So what is the future of mobility? It looks like from sustainability perspective. How do you see the mobility sector evolving, and how it should evolve to serve the purpose of saving the planet?
Really, really good question. One of the main things here, I think, is public sector and private sector working together. Like even today, I live, let's say, 6 kilometers away from the office. There's no bus that comes directly from my house to the office. So what I do is use combination of bus and then an e-scooter. I use the e-scooter as the last mile option. So in an ideal future, we would have something like the mobility as a service or multimodality. So an integrated platform for the user. When they open up the app and say, I want to get from point A to point C, then it tells you, first mile, take with the scooter, then use a bus, and then maybe the last mile pool or use a Bolt taxi, right? Because today, with public transport, at least in Tallinn, is that it's very, very slow. It shouldn't take you more than 40 minutes to move from door to door from your home to your office, for instance. But if you have to switch buses, or if you have to walk and then, or bike or etc., in Tallinn, it takes, in 80% cases, it takes more than 40 minutes to go from point A to point B, which means people think it's much easier to take my own car. Yeah. So the future of mobility would include less personal cars, less dependency on personal cars, because the public transport and the private sector have evolved together to offer any kind of a mobility service that's most feasible for the user. Because when you sit in a personal car, you just spend your time holding your wheel. You're not productive at this time, so no one wins from it. You sit at a traffic jam and then you park the car somewhere. So what's the win-win? It's only lose-lose. Yeah.
Actually, please.
So what I wanted to say is that if public transport and private service providers develop this mobility together, I think that would be the best case scenario.
I remember 2 years ago, probably 2 or 3 years ago, there was a login conference in Lithuania, and there was a mobility panel. and there was a presenter from, let's say, the old automakers, so from the old
Yeah.
guys, presenting the future mobility and showing amazing video of a person landing from the plane, taking the bus, then the scooter, then the cab, then taking a car sharing, and so the whole mobility package. And he was actually presenting it on the stage that was sponsored by a Lithuanian startup that already kind of implemented half of it, just beside of the AI and this augmented reality guy saying you what to do in the library. But you can actually, open the app and switch different, get the recommendations for switching different mobility platforms right away. And it's amazing to see that Bolt is also, it's not only another Uber, it's so much more. And then you not only giving a ride, but you also recommending to take a scooter. You also help us to get our food on our tables.
Yeah.
With Bolt Food, that also reduces traffic from home to restaurant and back. And it's it's up to us to choose more sustainable way to get from point to A to point B. And we need those companies that can disrupt the market. And it's amazing to live in the region where we have plenty of such companies. And it's super happy that those companies become a global players and unicorns. And so thank you for your time. Thank you for your insights, and let's hope that mobility will be more and more sustainable. And if you have a final word, the floor is yours.
First word is achu. Yes. And second is make more responsible choices.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.